Good evening. Right now, Metro Police are desperately searching for the person or people responsible for killing a man and a woman.
I got a male down in the middle of the street.
Breaking news now, a triple shooting leaves 2 dead.
Never expect for somebody to tell you your loved one was murdered.
This Labor Day will mark 42 years that have haunted the St. Cloud family.
30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers.
A couple months go by, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you really start to struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all, and certainly unfortunate that we have as many as we do. And that's why Ryan's work and the work of Project Cold Case is so important.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. Project Cold Case, our weekly Facebook Live. This week we got Lorena back with us.
Hey everybody.
Lorena Inclán, Action News Jax, reporter, anchor, all-around superstar, right?
Thank you. You're too kind.
You guys do amazing work, and you do it all the time.
Yes, so we're always working.
We're just talking about today is typically your day off.
Yes.
Mondays and Tuesdays you're off.
Yes.
You are always working on Monday and Tuesdays
always.
with following up on things.
But you know what? News doesn't take time off. So
no, we know that.
And this is important to me. So I think, this to me is not work.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and especially on your day off, because I know I try to keep some kind of separation from this on my days off, and enjoy family time.
It's hard
and
to
take
turn
care
off the switch, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Because we're constantly connected. I have my phone's here.
You got both phones going, checking in with the station.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us again. We love being able to have you in here and have that access to you and go back to these stories that you've been covering now. The one we're going to talk about today, Darrell Stringfield, you did in January 2018, so it's been over a year now. In the meantime, since your segment aired, which we'll watch in just a second, we've hit the 10-year anniversary of the shooting and of the death, because this was a little bit different. Darrell Malik Stringfield, we found out when you interviewed his mother. He went by Malik, and most people in the area where he was killed knew him as Malik.
Right.
But he was shot in October 2008 and doesn't die
until March.
Almost 5 months later. And
he was in a medically induced coma, and his mom watched him die every day. I mean, it was horrendous.
Let's watch your segment from January a year ago, and then we'll talk about the case and what we know now.
Sounds good.
This is where it happened at. I don't even like to come down this street. I don't even like to come over here.
Despite the pain this place brings, Jeanette McKenzie mustered the strength to meet us outside this apartment on Justina Road to send a message.
It's just emptiness there. Heart aches all the time.
It was after 10 p.m. on October 22nd, 2008. Darrell Stringfield, who went by Malik, was on these steps with friends when a masked gunman approached them, making threats. One of his friends was shot in the leg, but the suspect pumped 4 bullets into Stringfield and ran off. He went into a medically induced coma. For nearly 5 months, McKenzie watched her son die. He would pass away in March the following year.
I'm just praying and asking for justice, closure. It's been 8 years, going on 9 years. No one has come forward yet.
Ever since, McKenzie tells me years are marked with solemn anniversaries.
My birthday, I doesn't even celebrate my birthday. My birthday, October the 27th. This happened 5 days prior to my birthday.
Stringfield left behind a wife and children. McKenzie tries to keep her son's memory alive through them. One of her grandkids is an athlete, just like her son was.
Shalithia, she just got back from Germany. She played professional basketball.
Nearly 9 years after his murder, there's no suspect description, very little evidence to go on, and the people who know won't tell.
I want my son to not have left here in vain, to know that his mother never stopped trying to find out who are responsible for him not being here with me.
Mackenzie is well aware of the cycle of silence in the neighborhood her son was gunned down, but she's not giving up. Looking directly into our camera, she had this message.
If you know somebody that hurt somebody, I mean, come on, don't be coward. Don't be a coward. Come on and speak up. Don't you just as bad as the person that did that to my son if you know something and you won't say anything, because that person certainly was a coward.
If you know anything that can help police solve this murder, call Crime Stoppers at 866-845-TIPS. You can stay anonymous.
So that was the segment you did over a year ago.
There's a lengthier podcast too.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
on our website.
actionnewsjax.com/Project Cold Case. Yep. And there's a whole series of podcasts that we've done. And
you'll find Darrell Stringfield
and you'll find Darrell Stringfield in there with a much longer interview with his mom, a little more detail about him as a person, his family. But as you saw during that segment, he wraps up like a coach's meeting for Pop Warner football. He's a little league football coach, if you will.
And that apartment there is next to the field.
It's next to the field where they were coaches were meeting. So they come back. His mom describes that they're just hanging out chatting, you know, and a masked gunman walks up, shoots Darrell, or Malik as he's known in that neighborhood, and somebody else. The second person is shot but survives. And Darrell survives, but in fact, I was telling you this a minute ago. One of his daughter played basketball, and she played basketball in high school, and then she went on and played basketball at University of South Florida, and then went on and played
in Germany,
professional, in Europe. And there's an interview online with her when she was at the University of South Florida, and she's describing, you know, how she was in school, like something weird happened the night he was shot. Like her mom leaves and, you know, the house, and she thought it was a little weird, but she just thought they were going to get dinner. And then they come back the next day. She goes to school, and she's called to the principal's office. Her coach is there, and family, and there's tears, and she walks in, and she's, you know, they don't understand what's going on, and they tell her that her dad had been shot the night before, and that was why they had left the evening. But it seemed that that at the time of the shooting, there was at least some thought that Darrell was going to survive.
He didn't die right away.
He didn't die right away, but I think it was in the podcast. His mom describes like being able to talk to him on the phone, or somebody hands him the phone, and he said
something
collapses.
like, I don't know, like, you know, and then collapses. And then she says that she went to the hospital, and she saw him going into the hospital, and he gave her a thumbs up, and pretty much letting her know that he was going to be okay. But 5 months later, he passed away.
And then they end up telling his daughter, you know, that like basically we're going to take you to the hospital, and this may be the last time you are able to speak to your dad. And it was a very emotional interview with her, and there was the positive spin on the interview with her about the losing her dad and the motivation to still play basketball and find another role model,
because he was an athlete too. He was an athlete. And he played collegiate football. On a scholarship. He was very good.
Yeah, he was all-state first-team running back out of Jacksonville in 1987 or 88 when he played at Sandalwood High School. You know,
very talented. Got a scholarship to go play at Alabama State.
Very athletic. Passed that on to his children and his daughter specifically, who was playing. But it was really heartbreaking to kind of hear her, you know, telling about how she learned of it, and then being told like, you know, you're going to go see your dad, and it's probably the last time you'll ever speak to him. And then she goes into like seeing him in that condition and him not being able to talk, you know, back to her.
The kind of trauma that you go, especially at her age.
At her age, she was, you know, in high school then, you know, but young, and so. But it was just really odd that he, you know, I don't know he shot. He gives mom the thumbs up. You know, you just never know the damage that's done on the inside.
This could happen. He got shot 4 times. They had to put him in a coma, and couldn't come out of it.
Yeah. So he shot towards the end of October, I think the 22nd of October in 2008. His mom describes how her birthday's only 5 days later, but she doesn't celebrate that. She doesn't want to talk about it. Doesn't want to have doesn't. Birthdays and the holidays are obviously, you have Thanksgiving and Christmas time come right after that. Obviously, that was a very hard time for the family. And then in March, he succumbs to his injuries early March and passes away. The other man that was shot survives.
Yep. He was shot in the leg.
Yeah, JSO didn't participate in this.
No, they did not.
Story.
So we couldn't get a lot of details in that sense. We couldn't get information on a possible motive, on whether the other person who survived cooperated.
Right, because
gave any information.
According to Darrell's mom, she had heard or didn't feel like the other victim was very helpful in the investigation.
That was her sense, and she and you'll hear it in the podcast. Like she goes on to say that she believes that he may know something. Right. We don't know that for sure. We haven't been able to talk to this person.
Yeah.
But she's convinced, and I think she's right in saying that somebody knows something. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Who that person is, unfortunately, no hasn't come forward yet. We don't know. And to be clear, so that happened on Justina Road. This is the Arlington area.
Arlington area of town.
Yes, Arlington area, Justina Road. A lot of apartment complexes there. This happened right next door to a baseball field that also acts as a football field. And he didn't live there, so Malik didn't live there.
Right.
But he was there with some people hanging out on a doorstep.
And he grew up in that area.
He grew up there, and correct. So he's very familiar with that area.
Yeah, he was very familiar with that. The people in that area were very familiar with him. That was where he coached, I believe, in that Justina Pop Warner
League.
And
imagine being so well known. This is a man who was very successful in playing football. I mean, he got a full ride scholarship to go to Alabama State, and now he was coaching Pop Warner football. So obviously, parents trusted him to coach their kids because he knows his way around football.
Yeah.
So he was very well known in that area. And again, he went by Malik, even though we say Darrell Stringfield because that was I believe it's Malik Darrell Stringfield is what his name is, or Malik is his middle name. But anyway, he went by Malik. So everybody in that neighborhood knew him by that, and obviously knew his history too. I mean, he was very well known.
He was. I'm sitting here thinking back. The first year I ever played Little League Baseball, I played at Justina Athletic Leagues.
Really?
And I played on that field. And I was trying to figure out what year that was. It may have been, around, it was in the mid to late 80s, when I played there. So
oh wow, maybe around the same time.
Yeah, well, he was in high school. I was in Little League,
Yeah.
And, but I mean, just as we look through, the case, and as we talk to his family, and we shared every Sunday, we share on Facebook, social media, that what case we're going to look at, on Tuesday on our Facebook Live, and who we're with, and we said that it was going to be you, and that we were going to be talking about this case. And a lot of his family, started sharing it. A lot of them are, we're looking forward to seeing this. It's been 10 years now. It's been over 10 years since the shooting and since he died. And
this October will be 11 years.
This October will be 11 years since the shooting. So
way too much time.
Too much time in between. If there's somebody out there that had information then that wasn't willing to talk, like, it's been 10 years. Hopefully they're willing to come forward now. They can remain anonymous. They can call Crime Stoppers. We give that number out every week, 866-845-TIPS. We had Wiley Hodges, the executive director of Crime Stoppers, in that seat just a couple weeks ago, and he was very clear. If you call in with information that leads to an arrest and a murder, that's a $3,000 reward. And you will stay anonymous.
Right.
So,
and a lot of people think, well, don't they need my name to give me the reward? No, and I'm sure he explained it.
He explained that. They give you a number, and you can call back and find out. And we talked about this too, like within a month. Like his board meets monthly, and any case that a tip led to an arrest within that month, they decide, how to distribute the money. He said a murder, a violent crime, Like murder is $3,000. I know it's some, the crimes are up to $3,000, but that's not for murders. The murders are $3,000. The up to $3,000 is if somebody calls in with a burglary or a robbery. They may not get $3,000. Right. But Wiley was very clear that as long as you call the Crime Stopper tip line, that 866-845 TIPS number, and give the information directly to them, they will disseminate that information to the appropriate law enforcement agency, in this case, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. And if it leads to an arrest, basically within 30 days of that arrest happening, whoever called that tip in, will get a $3,000 check, or we'll be able to go to a bank, hand that number over, and they will hand them $3,000. So this is the perfect case for that scenario. From what we have been able to get from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, they need the public's help.
Yeah, and that's the case for a lot of stories that we cover. Is they won't be able to solve it unless the public comes forward. Yeah. And think about that. Like, all it takes is a phone call. All it takes is a email tip or whatever the case may be, and you could make the difference.
I mean, you can text tips in now. You can email them in.
Yes, it's so easy to do it. I mean, obviously, coming forward on something like this may not be easy.
Sure.
But think about what you can do to help a family by just picking up the phone.
Jeanette, Darrell's mom, I mean, she is very clear in your interview.
Yes.
She looks directly at the camera and she talks about how important it is for somebody to come forward.
And she mentioned that, obviously as horrific as it is to lose a child, she says that it hurts even more not knowing. And that's the whole point here. It's like, imagine if it happened to you, God forbid it, if it happened to you, obviously you would be heartbroken that you lost your family member, but not knowing why, I mean, how do you live like that? How do you go on? I mean, for her, she doesn't celebrate her birthdays anymore. Christmas, Thanksgiving, any of those holidays are just completely different now.
His children, he has a Darrell Jr., Darrell Stringfield II. He obviously has his daughter that played basketball. There's another child that we know of in there. I mean, this. People make these decisions and they take another human being's life, and obviously they're not thinking about the ripple effect and the ramifications of that. But it's 10 years later. At some point, I promise you, whoever did that, told someone or someone knew about it, and there
were a lot of people there. Yeah. It was a group of people hanging out who saw something. Maybe you saw the getaway car. Yeah. Even if you don't know, anything else, you saw the color of the getaway car. You'll never know how much that could help police.
Yeah, that very well. It's some of these stories we have a lot of information from law enforcement. Some of them we don't. This is one of the ones we don't have a lot of information from law enforcement. But so that means any information that anybody out there has, go ahead and call it in.
Right. If you heard something, saw something.
If the money is important, call it in through Crime Stoppers. If the money isn't important and you just want to get the information out there, call the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Maybe this is something that you think about all the time, and you go to bed with a heavy conscience. Like, rid yourself of that worry and just give the people in this case a call who could make a difference, and you could really help this family. This was Jeanette's only son.
Yeah, her
only son, her only child.
Her only
period.
child. Yeah.
Taken from her.
And she talks a lot about leaning heavily on her faith in the podcast, and she even talks about leaning on customers at the job that she has.
She says that she needs to work, and she made the joke about how she likes to buy things, so she needs it, to make money to buy things. I know what that's like. I like to buy things too, so I need it too. But she also said that she's I believe a supervisor or manager of customer service, and she says that she feels like she was put in that customer's path to help them, and that's how she gets through the day. I mean, and her faith too. She told me she wouldn't be standing there if it wasn't because of God.
And she's had that job for a long time now, because I remember when I worked at Compassionate Families before even starting Project Cold Case, like having communication with her, and talking to her, and she gets a lot out of that job, being able to interact with other people. you know, that's definitely where she needs to be in her role. And
that's awesome.
It's a good thing that she's had that opportunity, because we all grieve in different ways, and you know, some people may find comfort in sports, and some people may find comfort in solitude, and some people find comfort interacting with others, you know, and I'm glad that she's found that. But ultimately, what we'd like for her to be able to find is who did this, and
some justice,
get some of those answers for her. And so that's why we're here again. I mean, you know, this case is on our website. It's been featured on Action News over a year ago. We still have not got word of that arrest, which is what we want. So we're going to promote this again, publicize it again, and try to get whoever it is out there that has the information. We want this to reach them, so they know how important it is. You know, somebody may not think that it matters, may think that the family's moved on and that they don't care. Go listen to that podcast.
Right. And Ryan, do you think, I don't know if you can explain this probably better than me, but can you explain, like, when police are able to put sort of that stamp of resolved, that doesn't always necessarily mean that somebody got arrested, right?
Right. Yeah. So, you know, there are situations where whoever committed the murder may be dead.
Or already in prison, serving time or something.
And they may be serving a life sentence, or even be on death row. And in situations where somebody's on death row or serving a life sentence, it's unlikely that the state attorney's office is going to prosecute those cases.
Just that person will never come out of
prison. Because you know, it's a cost to the taxpayers. It's you know, some of them might say it's not worth the effort and taxpayer dollars to prosecute somebody that's already serving a life sentence or on death row.
But they might come out publicly and say, this person, we believe this person killed this person.
Right.
And it's like a
and
public statement.
We have resolved that case, and it is, you know, and there's always the chance. The other thing that a state attorney's office might do is hold on to that in case, you know, if there was ever an appeal and this person's serving a life sentence and then the conviction gets overturned or thrown out. Well, now you have them on this other case, and you can, you know, you can move forward with it then, because there's no statute of limitations on murder. But we have seen situations where they won't actively prosecute a case where the defendant is already serving a life sentence, you know.
But that doesn't mean that the case can't get resolved.
Right. And it doesn't mean that they wouldn't sit down with the family or couldn't sit down with the family and say, this is who killed your loved one. They're already in prison or they're dead. We've had that situation too, where somebody has died and they can't prosecute a dead person, but they can resolve the case. They can clear the case on law enforcement side, and the family will know who. They still may not know why. You know.
Is there a possibility that, and actually this just came to me right now, can somebody pursue civil litigation against somebody? Let's say they're in prison or something.
Yeah, I don't know if what the statute of limitations are on a civil wrongful death suit, but yeah, I mean, you would think, well, with like the O.J. Simpson case, you know, he was acquitted criminally and then found liable civilly, and so yeah, there may be something like that. Now, again, can you find an attorney that will take on a case?
That,
you know, does somebody have assets when they're serving life in prison? You know what I mean? If they don't have anything, you're not actually going to get anything from them. And finding an attorney that's willing to put forth the effort and not get paid, you know, is another.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation.
It is a complicated situation, and we you know, we're talking about this. We don't have any inside information that the person that killed Darrell Stringfield
was clear.
Is dead
this
or
was
in prison.
This was a masked gunman.
Yeah.
Who came up to them, and I believe some words were exchanged, and then bullets started flying.
Yeah, and we were not able to talk to anybody that was able to tell us what was said, you know, in that exchange. There may have been, and that may be, I would think law enforcement has that information, and it may be so important to the investigation that they didn't release it. You know,
and this person was masked, so it's very possible that nobody saw this person's face, but maybe you saw what he was wearing, his accent, I don't know, how he got away, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, they never made clear that there was a robbery. I don't know, did you have that conversation with his mom?
No, that was never, we didn't get
nothing
any.
Nothing was taken or stolen during the exchange, so.
Right. We didn't get any indication of what the motive could have been. This is one of those cases that we did with very little information to go on.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, you know. Obviously, we try to get the law enforcement aspect involved in this storytelling. But when we're not able to get the law enforcement involved, we go with what we do know, and we are able to give the family members a platform to make a plea to the community to ask somebody, whoever they know. And Jeanette was very clear. She said, if you have a heart, and she says this in the podcast, she said, if you have a heart, come forward. And she went on to say that if you don't speak up, then you're just as coward as the person who committed this.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously, she's grieving still. Nearly 11 years later, that'll never go away. You know what that's like.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, the idea that an arrest will bring some kind of closure or some kind of, it's just, that's not what we have found to be reality. I mean, you know, it starts a new chapter. So once they find out who, you know, now it's got to go through the judicial process, and you may never find out why, and you may never get. I mean, is there a reasonable explanation for murdering another human being? I mean, even if they tell you, you know, that you know, whatever it was, that Malik ran me off the road, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that it's not a justifiable reason, you know. So
Fact of the matter is that murder is wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and so, but it starts a new chapter and another process, you know, the judicial. And then once that judicial process is over and you get a conviction, we've seen this with the Tammy Welch case, where, you know, the family still has questions. They still hurt. They still grieve. They still are wishing that they, you know, are waiting for something to fill that hole.
And the father was upset with the outcome with the sentencing. I mean,
and I just don't know that anything ever fills that hole completely when you lose somebody this way. But
closure is a difficult thing to attain.
Yeah, I don't even know if it exists. You know, I mean,
But what would it mean to you to know who murdered your dad? What kind of feeling would that?
You know, to know that somebody out there is able to live their life, to have, you know, holiday meals with their loved ones, to be able to
or hurt somebody else, have the ability to hurt somebody else.
Have the ability to hurt somebody else. I was thinking about it this morning. You know, I'm coming up on the 10-year anniversary of my dad's murder, and he never got to meet his grandchildren. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that haunts me now and sticks with me, is that you've met my children, you know my children, and
adorable.
And he's never got that opportunity to experience that. And same, you know, with Darrell's children are going to have children someday, hopefully, you know, and he will never get to meet them. You know what I mean?
Or see his daughter become a professional basketball player. I mean, imagine how proud he would have been.
Exactly. And I'm sure, you know, depending on your beliefs, you know, he's looking down and he is very proud of her.
And that person will always be with you.
Yeah, she doesn't get to run off the court and give him a hug. He doesn't
give him a call and be like, "What do you think of that play that I just did?" You know, talk sports with her dad.
She tore her ACL. She's had ACL issues throughout her basketball playing days, and you know, her grandmother's telling us about the ACL. She's in the hospital in Germany, you know, recovering before she came back, and you know, he didn't get to call her. You know, he didn't get to give her words of encouragement when she was feeling down with an injury like that. You know, these are the real impacts of that murder. You know, there's the obvious trauma of taking another human being's life, but the long-lasting ripple effect of homicide is something that few people even care to take a glance into, you know, and but that's what we talk about. You know, that's what our organization is 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, it doesn't matter. These families are still impacted. They still want to know who. They still want to know why.
Because some people are still like frozen in time, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that if you know who did this, it may help you. You never move on completely, but maybe you can move on just to, you know, live for the other people in your life.
So there's,
you know what I mean?
there's this whole healing process, and to heal, you know, you need certain things, and you have questions. Okay,
otherwise you don't heal.
You don't heal. It obstructs that healing process. So when you see families that are upset with law enforcement because they don't have information, and we see it from both sides. We understand that law enforcement can't always provide that information, but right, wrong, or otherwise, that is holding back the healing of a family, you know, and so knowing who did it, knowing why they did it, all of those things are components in
help
healing.
Mend you a little bit, little by little.
And you know, you're never, I don't believe you'll ever be completely whole again. Like I said, that hole will never completely be filled. You will always miss your loved one. And I say that if somebody was arrested, the moment after it happened, it was, you know, given the strongest sentence, the death penalty, and even if, you know, you see them executed in a short time period, I promise you they walk out of that, you know, execution and they still are not whole again.
Absolutely,
you know?
Because your loved one is still gone.
Your loved one is still gone. But when you're journeying through that healing process, there are important things. And knowing who did it, you know, and knowing that they can't do it to somebody else, and knowing that they are facing some form of punishment.
There's a consequence for their action.
There's a consequence for their action. That is an important steps in somebody's healing process.
Right.
And that is withheld.
Right, and we live in a country of laws. Like, people can't get away with murder. I mean, that's not the way that it's supposed to be.
Right.
So if we can help, you know, solve these cases, bring people to justice who deserve to be, you know, prosecuted and you know, to the full extent of the law, then we're doing our part in society.
Right.
Because people shouldn't be running amok just, you know, thinking they can get away with murder.
You can't have that, and it really is a public safety issue.
It really is.
You know, and that's
why they
could
be in the grocery store, anywhere.
That's why it is so important that everybody does care, you know, and does pay attention. And it's why we do want people to share these Facebook Lives, to watch them, to interact with us, to ask questions. You know, ultimately, you know, we are doing our community a service, you know, and, you know, we may never know if somebody picks up the phone after this Facebook Live and calls Crime Stoppers and provides the tip that leads to an arrest in this case. We may never know that it was our conversation, because it may not happen today. It may take months or even more years, you know, before that happens. And it may never filter back down to us that this was what prompted that. But just the fact that it could be what prompts it is enough for us to keep doing it.
It's worth it.
It's worth
Absolutely
our time.
Worth it. Even just the reaction I get from families saying, thank you for caring. To me, that is all I need to hear.
Yeah.
You know, of course we care. I mean, these are unsolved murders, and there are murderers who have not faced the consequences that they should face.
Yeah, you know, so much of a victim's story is those last moments. You know, my dad was murdered. So why do people know about my dad? Because he was murdered. Well, that was just the last few minutes of his life.
Right.
You know, what about the 56 years leading up to that? And that's what
so much
you
more.
were able to do when we tell these stories about, you know, Darrell being a
football star
and going on to play college football and then coaching football. I mean, that was obviously something he was passionate about, and something he was, you know, he gave back to the community. And then we're able to talk about his daughter and what she's been able to do athletically. You know, we tell a story that is more than just the murder.
Right.
You know,
absolutely. It's a person who had family and, you know, was trying to live for something. I mean, it's ultimately, he shouldn't have been murdered. And, you know, whoever is out there who knows something, just get that off of your chest.
Yeah.
You know, go to sleep at night knowing that you did the right thing.
Right. Sometimes you know, you just have to do it, and you hope. I mean, I think Darrell was 40 years old when he passed.
So young.
You know, that's really young.
Prime of his life.
You know, yeah. And you know, you're not gonna. The family is not going to be all better, you know, when you come forward, you know, but you are helping them in the healing process. You're getting a bad person off the street that was willing to shoot Darrell Stringfield and another man.
Who it could be your family member next time.
Right.
You know, try to put yourself in this person's shoes, this family, grieving family's shoes. It could have been your family.
Yeah,
you know?
And you don't want it to be your family. And if we're leaving people out on the street that are capable of this, then there's always the possibility that one of those
That's right.
bullets could affect us. So
so if you are from that area, that Arlington area, Justina Road, everybody knows Justina Road, even if you're not from there. But if you know somebody who lives there, or if you lived there back in the day, if you lived there in 2008, October 2008, just think it wasn't that long ago.
No.
You know, you could think of what you were doing 10 years ago.
And
you know,
and that area, you know, around 10 years ago was going through a really tough time. You know, there was a lot of crime in there, a lot of violence. The sheriff's office put a substation in over there. I don't know if it's still there, but they put one in there for a while to try to deter that. I know people were scared that lived in that area at the time. It was overrun, and through the course of Justina Rhodes' history has had some real ups and downs. And
we've covered, unfortunately, several tragedies there.
Yeah, and so I know there were people that knew what was going on, that lived in fear, you know, over the years there.
And that's understandable. I mean, you don't want that to come to your doorstep.
No, you don't.
But I think, you know, enough time has passed, hopefully, that maybe you feel comfortable sharing what you know.
That would be the goal, and you know, hopefully, you know, you don't live there anymore. Again, you can remain anonymous. Right. You can pad your pockets a little bit, you know, and ultimately, you would be doing a great thing for Jacksonville as a whole, and for the Stringfield family. Right. So, you know, we hope that you watch this, you share it, we reach that person that is willing to make that call now. 10 years later.
And if you are that person and you believe that you're ready now, thank you.
Yeah.
I wish there were more people like you out there that would come forward. We wouldn't have such a large stack of unsolved murders in our city if more people would come forward.
Yeah, we keep seeing it. You know, Jacksonville is going through a particularly violent time right now.
Yep. It keeps growing. Unfortunately, it's not diminishing.
Murders. Yeah, murders are ahead of where they were last year. The clearance rate is falling. Fewer of them are being solved, and you know, one of that component is an engaged community and public. You know, providing information when they have it.
Right.
And
we're in this together.
Yeah,
this is our city.
We have to work together on this.
No matter where you live, it affects us all at the end of the day.
Yeah. So please come forward. If not just in this case, you know, I think. Darrell's mom was very clear on that, you know, like come forward, you know, whether
if you know something
in this case or another case, you know, if we're reaching people that can help, you know, that's what we want to do.
And that Crime Stoppers number again, I don't know if we have the full screen, but just so you see it again, it's 866-845-TIPS. Yeah. And it's pretty easy to remember. I say it all the time. You know.
Yeah, I told Wiley he did a great job of
866-845-TIPS. That's the Crime Stoppers number.
He has done a great job over the years getting the media engaged, so that I mean, you never hear a story about a crime without the reporters saying call Crime Stoppers.
And people might get sick of hearing it, but we got to continue to share it because people need to know where they can go to remain anonymous. And I know a lot of people don't believe it's anonymous, but it is. The call center is not even in this country. It's anonymous.
It is. And we talked about, you know, with Wiley, there was a Crime Stoppers director down in Miami, I think in South Florida, that was called to the stand, was asked to tell, you know, who provided the information, and he literally swallowed a piece of paper that was that may have had the, you know, the number on there, and he swallowed it, and it has been upheld through the court systems. That,
otherwise, people won't come forward. I mean, it has to be real.
They pay out. I can't remember. Wiley brought the numbers. He showed the amount of money that they've paid out over the years here locally and statewide.
Wow.
They are paying, you know, you guys could probably do a story on that, you know, I mean, how much money is paid out monthly because and it's anonymous, you know, I mean, people are willing, and he says that sometimes people don't even collect the money. They'll call it in anonymously, but they just don't, they don't collect the money. It's not about the money for them. They just, you know, want to do the right thing. So,
absolutely. It's their slogan, I think, is crime doesn't pay, but they do.
Yeah.
So, you know, if that motivates you, then go ahead and call. But if it doesn't, then also go ahead and call.
Yeah, I say there's a little saying that snitches get stitches, and I always said that, you know, Crime Stoppers should change it to snitches get riches.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And push that narrative out there, and you know, and help people be more willing to come forward.
Absolutely.
So, Lorena, thanks so much
for having
coming
me
today. We hope that Darrell's family, you know, we know that they're either watching or will be watching later. I know his mom has to work today, but
we haven't forgotten.
Yeah,
thank
we
you
haven't
for
forgotten.
sharing.
We're going to keep putting this information out there until an arrest is made or until the case is resolved one way or the other. We appreciate our partnership with you and Action News Jax.
Likewise.
Making sure that that happens and that these stories are told. And as long as we have the opportunity, we'll continue that. So how you can help is you can share these stories, comment, like, engage in these posts. The more engagements we get, the more people see them. And
if you want to learn more about other cold cases, that unfortunately there are thousands, you can go to projectcoldcase.org.
Projectcoldcase.org. If you want to check out the podcast on Darrell Stringfield's case or any of the other ones that Lorena has done, that's actionnewsjax.com/projectcoldcase. And as always, send us your questions and comments and cases, and we will do all we can to raise awareness for them. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you next week. We're going to close out with our remembrances of the victims that we've lost this week over the last however many years. Thanks again.